My date had just gone to the bathroom when the waitress rushed to my table and slipped a small folded note into my hand. Her face was pale, and her voice shook as she whispered, "Please read it now." I opened it under the table, expecting something minor. Instead, the note said, "Your drink isn't safe. Leave now." My heart jumped into my throat. I looked at my glass, then at my date's purse on the chair beside him, and a wave of fear hit me so hard that my hands began to shake. My name is Jessa Rowan. I am 28, trying to start fresh after a painful breakup. I live with the constant worry of my mom Valerie, the protective watch of my brother Colin, and the loud encouragement of my best friend Tia, who convinced me to try dating again. None of them could have prepared me for what I was about to find inside that man's bag. The night had started out normal. I arrived at the small restaurant feeling nervous but hopeful, telling myself this date might finally be a step in the right direction. The place was warm and inviting, with soft music playing and candles on every table. I spotted my date, Lauren Vale, waving at me from a booth near the window. In our messages, he had been polite, calm, and patient. I wanted to believe I could trust a stranger again, even if it scared me. We ordered drinks and talked about work, family, and our favorite movies. He seemed relaxed, maybe a little intense at times, but nothing that made me uneasy. I told him about my mom warning me to stay careful, and about my brother working hospital security and checking in on me constantly. He laughed and said he admired how close my family was. For a moment, I let myself believe the night would be simple. When Lauren excused himself to use the bathroom, I pulled out my phone and saw a message from Tia. "If he's weird, blink twice." I smiled at the joke and set my phone down. That was when the waitress appeared beside me faster than I expected. Her hands shook as she placed a folded note under the check holder. She did not look at me long. She just whispered, "Do not drink anything. I promise you. This is important." Then she walked away so quickly it made my pulse race. I unfolded the note under the table. Reading those words felt like ice sliding down my back. I glanced at my drink. Nothing seemed wrong, but the warning had come from someone who looked terrified. I did not know what to do. When the bathroom door opened and Lauren started walking back toward the table with a calm smile, fear washed over me in a way I could not ignore. His purse-like satchel hung from his shoulder as he slid into the seat, unaware that everything had shifted. As he talked about the menu, I could not take my eyes off the glass or the bag beside him. Something inside me whispered that I needed to be careful, that the danger was real, and that this night was not normal anymore. If you're watching this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from so I can welcome you. The moment Lauren returned to the table, I felt something shift inside me, as if the air had thickened and the soft lighting in the restaurant had turned harsh. He sat down with an easy smile, unaware of the note hidden in my hand under the table. My pulse thudded in my ears as I tried to keep my expression neutral, my fingers gripping the edge of my seat to stay steady. I forced myself to breathe slowly while he talked about a dessert he wanted to try later. I nodded along, even though my mind was racing. I kept replaying the waitress's warning in my head. I stared at my drink, noticing a faint shimmer at the bottom of the glass that had not been there earlier. It felt like the room had grown colder. I glanced at the waitress across the room. She looked away quickly, as if she did not want Lauren to notice her watching me. Her nervous behavior only made the fear inside me tighten. I tried to keep my voice steady when Lauren asked if I was still hungry. I said I was fine, just a little warm, even though I felt frozen. He frowned slightly, as if studying my reaction, then casually reached for his satchel on the chair beside him. As he lifted it, something inside shifted and made a soft clinking noise. My stomach tightened instantly. Before I could process that sound, the satchel slipped from the chair and fell onto the floor. A small clear bottle rolled out and stopped near my foot. Lauren reacted too slowly for it to seem like a harmless accident. I bent down before he could stop me and picked up the bottle. The label was partly scratched off, but I recognized the shape because my brother Colin had shown me what these bottles looked like when he warned me about drink tampering cases from the hospital. My fingers trembled as I held it. I forced a smile and handed the bottle back, pretending not to notice the alarm bells going off inside me. He snatched it quickly and shoved it into his bag with a stiffness he tried to hide. The tension in his jaw deepened for a moment before he softened his expression again. That shift in his face told me everything I needed to know. Something was wrong, very wrong. While Lauren reached under the table to adjust the strap of his bag, I took the smallest chance I could find. I leaned forward and opened the flap of his satchel just enough to see inside. My breath caught hard. Along with the bottle I had just seen, there were 2 more identical containers lined neatly in a pocket. There was also a folded piece of paper with names written in a clean, sharp handwriting. I recognized none of them until my eyes stopped on the last name, my own, Jessa Rowan, written in dark ink. Beneath the list was a small phone I did not recognize. The screen lit up from the movement, and I saw a photo on it. It was a picture of me taken earlier that evening as I walked toward the restaurant. I had not noticed anyone watching me or following me. I sat frozen for a long second, shocked that he had taken a photo of me before our date even began. My mouth went dry as the truth settled hard in my chest. This was not a simple date. This man had planned something. When I slowly lifted my eyes, Lauren was already watching me. His smile had faded, replaced by a look I could not read fully. It hovered somewhere between suspicion and calculation. He asked if everything was all right, his tone soft but tight. I pulled myself together and forced a small laugh, pretending I had only dropped my fork. He nodded, but I could tell he sensed something had shifted. He leaned back and relaxed a little, but I knew he was paying close attention to every move I made. The waitress passed by again, placing a tray on the table behind us, and her eyes flicked toward me with worry. That look told me she had seen this behavior before. I placed my hands on my lap so Lauren would not see them trembling. The restaurant suddenly felt too quiet, too small, too close. Every instinct I had screamed at me to get up and run, but I also knew leaving abruptly might trigger him. I needed a plan. I needed to get out safely without letting him know that I knew the truth. I took a slow sip of water and forced myself to breathe evenly as I built a plan in my head. I reminded myself of my brother's advice to stay calm until I had a clear chance to move. I knew one thing for certain now. I was not staying with this man for another minute longer than I had to. My mind raced as I sat across from Lauren, pretending to stay calm while my heart kept pounding against my ribs. I knew I needed to get out of the restaurant without causing suspicion, but every move felt dangerous under his quiet, watchful gaze. I kept thinking about the bottles, the photo of me on his phone, and my name written on that list. I reminded myself of what my brother always told me: stay steady until you reach a safe place. I forced my breathing to slow and looked up at Lauren with a soft smile, hoping he could not see how close I was to shaking. I needed to act like nothing was wrong, like the note from the waitress had not warned me, like I had not just uncovered something terrifying in his bag. I folded my hands together and said as casually as I could, "I think I need to step outside for some air. This place feels warm." Lauren's expression flickered in a way that made fear crawl back up my spine. He sat up straighter and said, "I can come with you." The firmness in his tone made my stomach twist. I knew if he followed me, I would not get away. I kept my voice light and added, "No, it's fine. I'll be quick." I reached for my purse, making sure the bottle I had taken from his bag was tucked safely inside. I stood up slowly, keeping my posture relaxed even as my legs tensed to run. Lauren's eyes followed me in a way that felt wrong, the kind of stare that studied every step I took. I forced myself not to rush. I walked toward the entrance like a normal customer stepping out for fresh air. Only when I pushed through the front door and felt the cool night breeze hit my face did I allow myself to move faster. I looked behind me briefly to make sure Lauren was still at the table. For the moment, he stayed seated. That gave me the seconds I needed. I stepped onto the sidewalk and pulled my phone out with shaking hands, immediately calling my brother Colin. When he answered, I whispered, "Something's wrong. I found bottles. My name was on a list. I think he put something in my drink." Colin's voice sharpened instantly. He told me to get into a public place with people and lock the door if I could. I scanned the street and spotted a convenience store on the corner with bright lights and a few late shoppers inside. I hurried toward it, pushing through the door with my heart racing so hard it felt like it echoed in my ears. Colin told me to stay on the call, keep talking, and stay where there were cameras and witnesses. I moved toward the back of the store near the refrigerators where I could watch the front windows without being too visible. My breath was unsteady as I tried to make sense of how quickly the night had changed. Moments later, through the glass, I saw Lauren step out of the restaurant. His posture was different now. His shoulders were stiff, and he scanned both sides of the street with slow, deliberate movements. When his eyes passed over the convenience store, my chest tightened. I crouched slightly behind a display shelf, still keeping the phone against my ear. Colin told me to stay low and stay quiet. Lauren walked a few steps, checking the alley beside the restaurant, then looking across the street as if trying to guess which direction I went. The uncertainty on his face lasted only a moment before he started walking toward the sidewalk, scanning the area like someone hunting for something that belonged to him. I gripped the phone harder. Colin told me officers were already on the way and would meet me inside the store. I kept my eyes trained on Lauren's movements. The fear inside me grew heavier with every step he took closer to the street I was on. The store lights reflected faintly on the windows, making it harder to tell if he had noticed me. He stopped directly across from the store, pulling his phone from his pocket and staring at the screen as if checking something. Then he looked up again, his eyes tightening as he studied the area. I swallowed hard and stayed still. I reminded myself I was not alone. I was in public. People were around me. Help was coming. All I had to do was hold on until it arrived. For the first time since the waitress gave me that note, I felt a hint of hope break through the fear. I had made my move. I had left the table. I had acted before he could. Now I only needed to survive the next few minutes. I stayed crouched behind the display shelf, whispering to Colin through the phone as I watched Lauren stand across the street, scanning every doorway and shadow like he was trying to track my steps. Backward. My breathing felt uneven, but I forced myself to stay still. The convenience store felt safe, but only because he had not seen me yet. The bright lights overhead hummed softly, and the cashier looked at me with concern when he noticed I was hiding, but I pressed my finger to my lips, begging him silently not to make a scene. Outside, Lauren paced a few steps before lifting his phone again, scrolling quickly as if using it to locate me. The thought that he might have a tracking app or photo timestamps made my stomach tighten. Colin's voice stayed steady as he told me officers were only moments away and that I needed to maintain my position. I whispered that Lauren was starting to look angry. His jaw was clenched and his movements grew sharper. He stepped closer to the crosswalk, glancing directly at the store window. I ducked lower. He paused, staring hard through the glass, and for a terrifying moment I thought he had spotted me. He leaned in slightly, looking past the counter, past the shelves, searching faces and movements. I held my breath until my chest ached. After a long second, he stepped back, frustrated, and ran a hand through his hair. He scanned the sidewalk again, then turned to look behind him toward the alley. Just when I thought he might walk away, the store's door chime rang. The sound jolted me so sharply that I nearly dropped my phone. I peeked over the shelf, terrified he had come in, but it was an older man buying cigarettes. Still, the noise made Lauren whirl around and look toward the entrance again. His pacing grew tighter, more agitated, like he knew he was running out of time. A young woman walked past him on the sidewalk, and he jolted toward her with a quick step before stopping himself. She gave him a confused look and kept walking, leaving him standing rigid in the warm glow from the streetlights. Colin heard me whisper what I saw and muttered that officers were pulling up on the opposite corner. I looked through another section of shelving and saw two uniformed officers approaching the intersection from the left. Their calm steps contrasted sharply with the panic rising inside me. Lauren did not see them yet. He was too focused on scanning the convenience store windows. He paced again, stopping closer than before. His eyes moved faster now, darting from one aisle to the next like he could sense my presence. My throat tightened as he stepped directly across from the store's entrance. That was when one of the officers approached him from behind. the officer called out to him in a firm voice. Lauren turned slowly, and I watched his expression shift into something cold and calculated. He said something to the officer, but I could not hear the words. The second officer approached from the other side, creating a small triangle around him. Lauren's shoulders stiffened. His hand moved toward his bag. I recognized the motion instantly because I had seen how carefully he guarded that satchel at the restaurant. Fear surged through me as the officers shouted commands. Lauren lifted his hand a little more, but the officers reached for him before he could move further. They grabbed his arms, forcing him to the ground with practiced precision. His bag fell to the pavement, and the door to the store shook slightly from the commotion outside. The cashier jumped at the sudden noise, and I covered my mouth to stop myself from gasping. One of the officers opened the satchel, pulling out the clear bottles, the list of names, and the phone with photos. He lifted the items into the air for the other officer to see. Even through the glass, I could see the shock and anger on their faces. Lauren twisted on the ground, trying to turn his head toward the store window as if still searching for me. His eyes locked on mine for a split second. The expression on his face changed from calculation to something darker, something that felt like a warning. A cold shiver moved through my body. The officers pulled him to his feet and led him toward the patrol car, keeping their hands firm on his arms. The cashier exhaled loudly when he realized the danger was no longer aimed at anyone in the store. I leaned against the shelf, feeling the adrenaline crash all at once. My legs trembled so hard I had to steady myself with one hand. The officer who had checked the bag stepped inside moments later. He looked at me, at my shaking hands, and said quietly, "You're safe now. You did the right thing." For the first time since the waitress handed me that note, I let myself breathe fully. I felt the fear loosen just enough for me to stand upright again. The nightmare I had stumbled into was ending, but the weight of what could have happened stayed heavy in my chest. I walked out of the store with the officer beside me, watching as they closed the patrol car door on the man who had planned something I was not prepared to imagine. The flashing lights reflected off the windows around us, and I wrapped my arms around myself, grateful that I had trusted my instincts before it was too late. The hours after Lauren's arrest felt like a blur, but the kind of blur that stays sharp in the places that matter. Once the officers escorted me out of the convenience store and sat me down in the back of the patrol car to take my statement, the reality of everything hit me all at once. I told them every detail I could remember, from the moment the waitress handed me the warning note to the second the officers tackled him. My voice shook through half of it. The officer writing everything down kept reminding me to take my time and breathe, and every time I paused, I felt the weight of what could have happened if even one thing had gone differently. I kept thinking about the bottles in his bag, the list of women's names, and the photo of me taken before I stepped into the restaurant. The idea that he had been watching me before our date even started made my skin crawl. When I finished giving my statement, the officer told me I had likely prevented more than one person from being harmed. That thought was hard to process. I never imagined I would be in a situation where my actions could save someone else. I sat in the patrol car while they finished searching Lauren's belongings, and when they finally gave me the all clear to call my family, the first person I dialed was my mom. Valerie answered in a panic, demanding to know if I was safe. Her voice cracked so hard that I nearly broke down right there. I told her I was okay and that the police were with me. She cried openly, and even though she tried to stay strong, I could hear the fear in every breath she took. 10 minutes later, she arrived at the scene with my brother Colin right behind her. My mom ran to me so fast that she almost stumbled, pulling me into the kind of hug that squeezes your ribs but makes you feel grounded again. Colin, usually calm and composed, looked angrier than I had ever seen him. He asked for every detail once more, not because he doubted me, but because he needed to hear it in his own way. When the officers showed him the bottles taken from Lauren's bag, I saw his face harden. He told the lead officer he'd seen cases like this in the hospital, and that I was lucky the waitress had noticed what was happening. I thanked her again later that night, when an officer brought her over to speak with me. She explained she had seen Lauren glance at my drink more than once, and recognized the behavior from training the staff had received. She said she could not stay silent because something about the way he kept watching me made her uneasy. I hugged her and promised I would never forget what she did. Back at home, my mom refused to let me out of her sight, hovering like she used to when I was sick as a child. My brother checked the locks, windows, and backyard 3 different times before he finally relaxed enough to sit down. I kept replaying everything in my mind, especially the moment I opened his satchel. Knowing my name had been on that list still made my stomach twist. Over the next few days, detectives contacted me with updates. They told me that my statement, the bottles, and the list of names connected Lauren to several open investigations. Some women he had gone on dates with had reported strange behavior, but lacked proof. Others had gone missing in nearby towns. The evidence in his bag opened all those cases again. Knowing that my actions helped uncover the truth about him brought me a strange mix of relief and heaviness. I was grateful to be safe, grateful the truth had come out, but it hurt to think about the women whose endings were not as fortunate as mine. I told myself I would carry that awareness forward, not out of fear, but out of respect for how fragile trust can be. In the weeks that followed, I healed in pieces. I talked through everything with my family, and I met with a counselor Colin recommended through his hospital. I deleted the dating app, not because I wanted to hide, but because I needed time to reclaim my sense of security on my own terms. I found myself appreciating the smallest things, like the walk from my porch to the mailbox, or the way my mom insisted on making me tea every night. I looked at life differently now, not with fear, but with a deeper understanding of how quickly things can shift when you are not paying attention. The last time the detectives called, they told me I had been the deciding factor in preventing further harm. I hung up the phone and let myself breathe in the safety of my living room, grateful for the chance to keep living a life I almost lost. And when I finally felt ready, I sat down to record this story, not to scare anyone, but to remind people to trust their instincts, to listen when something feels wrong, and to never ignore that small voice inside that tries to protect you. If you made it to the end of this story, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, so I can personally thank you for being here.